Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. It can be difficult to get college kids to learn basic finance, renting versus buying, good debt versus bad debt, how to make a budget. But what if you had an NFL linebacker to teach you? Well, that's what New York Jets linebacker Brandon Copeland is doing. When it's off-season, he co-teaches a class on financial literacy at the University of Pennsylvania, his alma mater.
Those of you who do not know, I'm Professor Copeland, Brandon Copeland. You don't have to call me Professor, just call me Cope. This is our last class. We've had an amazing semester. For those of you who don't know, what we typically do in this class is it's all about financial literacy. It's all about the things in life that, for some reason or another, you go through school and they don't teach you for some reason. Credit, buying your first house, the cost of renting. But today's class in particular is going to be about entrepreneurship. A lot of people throw that word around very freely nowadays. Everybody wants to say entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, and half the time it just means you don't really have a job, right?
Brandon Copeland is here with us now. Brandon, great to have you on American Voices.
Great to be here.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So when did you realize that people needed basic financial skills?
Yeah, I realized that when I was making mistakes or approaching a lot of major life decisions unconfidently, right? And I thought about it, and when you take a big step backwards and you just take that bird's eye view, you're like, I went to some great schools, University of Pennsylvania. I went to a great school in Baltimore for high school, Gilman, and I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to buying a house or whether you should lease or buy a car and all these things.
So I know you worked one summer at UBS.
Yes, sir.
But when did you first learn about money and finance? You would just say, you were like millions of other people, you were clueless. But then how did you hear about it and learn about it?
Yeah, so I was fortunate. My high school football coach actually ran his own hedge fund. I had no idea.
Your high school football coach ran a hedge fund?
Coach, yeah, which is
that's an unusual
exactly. pretty fortunate to fall into that blessing. So when I was in high school, I would go work out, and I would actually go intern for him. And I had no idea what was going on. I remember the Bloomberg computers, and I was just like looking at it like, man, this is a weird computer. I can't do Facebook on this. And just seeing numbers going up and down. And I just knew that my coach was in a very stable financial situation. And at that point, I had no idea what I was doing, but was just taking an interest in, man, this man is making a great career for himself and his family, and his back doesn't hurt. He's not running through wedges. He's not taking on blockers, right? And that piqued my interest as a young kid in high school. And so from there, it was always just trying to understand. Eventually, I know what I want to do to create money for myself, but now if I can take it and put it in these vehicles that can make my money work for me.
Yeah, I mean, my father, who was a small-town banker, always used to say, put your money in the bank. It works while you sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what kind of caught my interest, caught my eye early. I was blessed to have that opportunity, blessed to have him accept me as an intern.
So let me ask you, when you had this idea of teaching at your alma mater, was it easy? I mean, did everybody say, hey, Brandon, let's get you in that classroom?
Not at all.
How did this happen?
Yeah, so this was an idea I brought to UPenn 3 years ago. And at first, there was pushback just because, one, obviously, I'm not a PhD or someone you would typically deem as a professor, I think. But then, two, I think that people questioned whether or not this was a topic we needed to talk about and discuss. So it took me a few years to actually gain support, and unfortunately, I have a co-professor for the class. And last May, it was my 5-year reunion. I just happened to walk into a building that he was in. I just happened to share the idea with him, And then he was monumental in terms of talking to the right people within the school to make sure it was a credited class, a fully credited class. Those were my biggest things. It has to be fully credited.
So you co-teach it with him?
I co-teach it with him.
What is the class?
The class is called Urban Financial Literacy, Inequities and Empowerment. So we have a 3-hour lecture every Monday. We'll spend about 2 hours on some financial literacy topic. So I nicknamed it Life 101. So you'll talk about your credit, good debt versus bad debt, buying your first house, the cost of renting, buying versus leasing a car, major appliance purchases, anything really that you have to deal with in life that you just, for some reason, we don't talk about in school.
How many students do you have?
So we have 30 students. We wanted to keep it small and intimate this first semester, but it was the most popular class at Penn. We had 180 students apply literally on the first day. So we showed them that the students actually do want this information.
And how many in the class?
There's only 30 in the
180 for 30.
Yeah, 180
That's
tried to get
good.
into.
And they all weren't football fans.
No, they all weren't. A bunch of them had no idea what
Who
I
was
do.
going to coach the
Yeah.
And just said, who is that good-looking teacher that I have?
One of the things that I tell my students, and one of the things I've learned from this semester is because there's been a lot of cookie cutter financial advice out there that I feel like actually hurts people because, for example, I've done interviews and people have been like, hey, okay, well, tell the people to save 50% of your money and invest 20% and live on 30%. I'm like, no, right? Because there's a lot of people out here who hear that and they think about, I can't save 50% of my money and keep my lights on next month, right?
Sure.
So now I don't listen to anything else. Going through this semester has made me take a different approach to how I attack my own financial well-being and then the advice I give to others. And one of the first things I ask everyone to do is really sit back, and it takes time, understand your values and what you value and why. And forget about Instagram, forget about everyone else. Your values might be much different than mine. And what makes you happy could be different than mine.
So give me an example. Somebody's saying, okay, that makes a lot of sense, Brandon.
Yeah.
So what do you mean think about my values? How does it relate to money and the decisions I make?
So there's a lot, especially, as athletes, there's a lot of guys who will come up and say, hey, man, I want to buy this nice car, right? Okay, well, why? Well, I've always wanted a Mercedes or a Rolls or whatever it may be, right? Okay, well, why? Well, I don't know. I just want one. I feel like I need one, right? When you can really explain why you want something.
Yeah, if you want to go from A to B, it doesn't really matter. Right?
Exactly.
Whether you're driving a Ford or a Mercedes.
Exactly. And then a quick story from not even an athlete's perspective. So we did a whole lecture on retirement investing, and one of my guest speakers and myself shared our whys, right? Why we choose to save as opposed to spend crazily now. And one of the guest speakers, he spoke about his house and the life he wants to have for his family, all this good stuff. And then one of my students is like, well, I want to be able to bring all of my friends and family on first class and get them all jewelry, and, we can rent boats and all that stuff. And I'm just like, you literally missed the entire lecture, right? But then I had to take a step back and understand that, hey, that may be what he values, right? Just because I don't value it and find intrinsic value in it, maybe that's what motivates him to work hard and what he's going to be happy with at the end of his life, right? So
yeah, but that means he's got to have a lot more money than you, right?
Exactly.
If you're going to do all those indulgences.
Exactly. But then, and so the point of the class too is okay, now you can do that if you want to, but you'll never be able to say, if someone would have told me the consequences of my actions or my spending or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we unpack a lot.
Seems to me that basically it starts with doing a budget, right?
Yeah, 100%. And the way I tell people to do it is start with all of your expenses. Before you worry about what you're bringing in, literally figure out every single expense. So, and that goes down to your Netflix, your Spotify, your car loan, your insurance, all of that type of stuff. Every single penny that's leaving, figure that out, because 9 times out of 10, once you do that, you probably find something in there that you just were like, why am I spending this much on cable, for example, right? I end up using Netflix anyway.
But you also know, okay, this is what you need to live.
Exactly.
So let's say you can live on 10, right? But you're making 40.
Right.
So you pay taxes at 20,
Yep.
roughly, depending if you're a well-paid NFL player, right?
Right.
And you have 10 to save.
Yep.
But it starts with doing the budget.
It starts with doing the budget. It starts with finding those expenses, and then you can also see where you want to increase your spending as well, right? Like you said, like you can see what I'm spending now, but like I really want to travel more. So, okay, maybe let me take something from here and push more here or whatever it may be.
So let me ask you, do you teach compound interest?
Yes, we do.
I mean, can you explain compound interest to your teammates and to the students in the class?
Exactly.
I mean, that's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. And just understanding how important time is and how much of a benefit time can be. For me personally, it was more important that my students understand that I don't need you. Like I told them, I don't need you to know the formula for this. There's some teachers who will require you to know that. I don't ever need you to calculate it yourself. I just need you to know that having your money work and receive this is much better than not having it do this, right? I just need you to understand the concept.
The longer it can work, the more you have.
Exactly.
So, these are college students, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're what? 20 or they're juniors or whatever, right?
All of them.
And isn't it surprising how much they need to know about it?
Right. Yeah. No, it's huge, and I think that's the reason why I chose to teach it, because I could have given the class to someone else to let them teach, but I wanted to be there to make sure it was a humble learning environment, right?
That's really interesting, a humble learning environment. What do you mean by humble learning environment?
Yeah, when I was a student at Penn, and there are certain questions that you just wouldn't ask because you felt like you already needed to
have known
them, right? So
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so when you get into the 401k conversation, it's one of those things that we've all heard about, but like some people really just don't truly understand it. And I wanted to create an environment where you can feel comfortable asking that, right? We also create a very interactive, conversational environment where people are sharing life experiences. And we've done some pretty cool things this semester. My final exam was I figure if you can teach someone else this information, if I can teach you how to teach, then one, you can share this information with your...
That's very true. It's like, running your route, or it's like knowing how to be a linebacker. If you can teach somebody, then you know how to do it.
Exactly. And I figure the problem with this financial literacy stuff is like some people get the information and they never share it. And I want you to be able to share it with your family, your brother, your mother, your sibling, right? Your cousin, whatever. But so what we did was at the end of the semester, because our ultimate goal is to grow this thing to worldwide. But we had a bunch of high school students from Philly come into the class. One, they got a college visit at Penn, and then two, we had my students break up into groups and teach them these different financial literacy topics. And to see these high school kids who had probably never heard about investing start arguing about whether to invest in Apple or Nike or Spotify, right?
I mean, it seems to me that a threshold decision is whether you believe you can pick stocks or whether you believe you should just buy the market, an index, right?
Yep.
And our whole society is picking, is competing, is believing you have perfect information, but maybe the perfect information is in the market as a whole.
Yep, 100%.
So do you discuss that?
We discussed that, yeah.
Active, passive?
Yeah, so the thing for me personally as well is just taking the fear out of it. I think especially for some of us, it's like everyone I feel like likes to make their job seem like rocket science to a certain extent. And I've been fortunate enough to, one, just not have that fear when I do talk to people and try to learn about different things. And I don't mind asking a dumb question. But two, I've also been, called, so to speak, to humble the information. And I share a bunch of stuff so that people understand that this isn't rocket science. So the first step for me is just there's a lot of kids who are just afraid of the market, right? Afraid to take risk, right? But now to show them that, hey, you can just invest in index funds and look what your money can do.
Yeah.
Or you can switch, like you have your money sitting in a normal checking account, but guess what? They have these high yield accounts right now. And why do you think that they exist? Because they'll give you 2%, but they're taking your money and they're getting 5, 6, 7% off of it, right?
Well, that's really important. So what's the biggest mistake that people make with their money, you think?
I think the biggest mistake is treating it like, well, some people, treating it the way some people treat their physical health, in the sense of there's some people who are afraid to go to the doctor, right? And we're all guilty of it to a certain extent. We don't want to pull back that curtain. And I think that plagues a lot of us in financial health as well, in terms of, I just don't want to know, right? Not taking a hard look at your expenses versus what you're bringing in because you just don't want to know. And I think also not including yourself in these conversations, because what we did was we had a lot of the kids have to talk to parents and guardians and mentors about this stuff, and they were able to see how a lot of people get a little standoffish once you start talking about finances.
Yeah, I mean, money and sex.
Yeah.
Don't talk about that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And by not having those conversations, we're not able to build and learn from each other's mistakes, right? And then also from each other's successes.
So tell me, you got any tips for people about how they can be happy with what they have and how it's easier to spend less?
Yeah, I think it all starts with your values. For me, it's about the lifestyle and the quote-unquote freedom of mindset, financial freedom, all of that type of stuff, and the things I can provide for my family. So I think for the people out there who are searching for more, I think there's nothing wrong with working to get that, right? I'm never going to dissuade you from doing that. But I think you need to truly take a look at your values and why you're chasing more. And then figure out what you're willing to sacrifice to get more, if it's worth that sacrifice.
Sure.
If it's worth not, the sleepless nights and not seeing your family as often and all that type of stuff. And then if so, then go get it.
It's wise advice. So you're a linebacker on the New York Jets.
Yep.
Do you find that you switch gears when you're a linebacker versus a professor? Or
Yeah.
I guess it's got to be different.
It's a little different, but I prepare for everything the same. I think that's one of the beautiful lessons that I'll take away from football is like there's no difference in preparation. There's difference in, I'm not working out to be a professor. I'm preparing slides. But literally
it's the same thing.
Exactly. Our class would start at 4:30. At 4 p.m., I would cut everything off, and it would be music, headphones in, and getting ready for my first lecture like it was a game. I remember sweating, walking in there, getting nervous and everything like that. And it got more comfortable, similar to the NFL. I got more comfortable with that process as the semester went further along.
But you had to push yourself.
I had to
get in the game.
Yeah, get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've also personally taken from this is just being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think once you understand that the beautiful things in life are out of your comfort zone, then that's when you really allow yourself to take those chances and be vulnerable.
Right.
Because me standing up there in front of the kids, I'm just like, this is a different situation, right? These kids are expecting me to be an expert. I live in New Jersey. My house is in New Jersey. And then in season, I also have to rent a place in New Jersey closer to the facility. Why do I have to do that? Because if I'm 45 minutes away from the facility without traffic, if there's traffic, if a snowflake hits the ground, now I'm an hour, 15 minutes away. If I'm 5 minutes late, that's a $13,000 fine.
Is that right?
It's worth me to just rent
$13,000 for a minute late.
And that was last year.
That's what people don't understand.
Yeah.
There's a real set of rules.
Exactly.
And you either follow the rules or pay the consequences. And I didn't know the New York Jets consequences were $13,000 for a minute late.
Yeah, and that was similar. That was how it was last year.
That would pay for your apartment that year.
Exactly. So it was just more important to do that. But there's a lot of guys who have to have multiple places, and that's a cost of doing business, right?
Yeah. So you want to do this for a while? You think this teaching?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. It's not that I didn't like it. I loved it. I loved being in the classroom. The commute was rough on me. There was times where I was flying and training between Florida and going to class, and that was rough. But my goal is not necessarily to teach. It's just to make this information accessible to all for free. I like to call the class life because it's really just giving a bunch of life skills as well. Every class we do this thing called Who Are You? and it literally makes everybody get up, stand up, and I give them, the first few classes are just like, introduce yourself, give you a quick elevator pitch. And you have a minute and a half, right? You see kids go from like speaking for like 40 seconds and then it being quiet and stuttering and all that stuff till by the end of the semester, they're just, hey, I'm this and I can come into your company, I can get X, Y, and Z, right? And then as we go throughout the semester, we throw hard interview questions at them and you just watch them come into a more confident being.
Well, Brandon, thanks for coming in and visiting with us. I mean, you've taught us a lot, and I think your students are lucky and your mission is noble.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with Jet linebacker Brandon Copeland. He co-teaches a financial literacy class at the University of Pennsylvania, his alma mater, and visits us on Facebook at American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley. Brandon, thanks for coming in. It's great.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.